Asato ma sadgamaya Tamaso ma jyotirgamaya Mrityormamritam gamaya Avirmaedhi Rudrayate dakshinam mukham Te namam pahi nityam. Om, lead us from the unreal to the real. Lead us from darkness unto light. Lead us from death to immortality. Reach us through and through ourself, and evermore protect us from ignorance by thy sweet, compassionate face. The subject is the search for fulfillment. And we're going to use one of the most ancient of the Upanishads as a theme for this. This is the Chandogya Upanishad, which contains in it one of the, or probably the most famous of all the statements in all of the Upanishads. The statement, Tattvamasi, you are that, thou art that. And so the process is to explain who the thou is and who the that is. And the Upanishad has this, begins this with a description of a student going to for his studies, because in the ancient system prevalent at that time in India, this was the custom that a boy or a girl, boys and girls both were sent like this to schools where for a certain number of years they would live in the teacher's ashrama or in the school, and as a group, and they would study the scriptures, and having absorbed the teachings imparted by the elders, they would return home, and then this would be after a period of years, they would have grown up and they would be ready to start their life in society. And they would marry, and then there would be a family would be started, and then the children would be raised in the same way as they were raised. Like that, life continued in that way until a certain age had been reached. That is to say, the children, when one is able to see the children of one's own children, that is to say, one's grandchildren, one's hair has grown gray, they describe various indications that the time has come, you have fulfilled your basic duties in society, you've raised the next generation, you've earned sustenance, because the householder is the support of the whole society. All of these obligations have been done, and then the next step would be for retirement, both husband and wife would leave the management of all household affairs to their children, and then they would go off into an ashrama in the forest, that is to say, outside of the cities, outside of the centers of activity, of external activity, and there they would absorb themselves in spiritual practice, and then eventually they would take entirely to spiritual life and adopt the life of sannyasa or renunciation. This was the scheme. Now, as part of that scheme, this father had sent his son to a school, and the son came back, and he was quite elated with the enormous amount of knowledge, as he thought, that he had learned. And so he seemed to be very proud and very haughty. And his father, noticing this, said to him, "Well, did you ask your teacher the following question?" So he said to him, "Shvetaketu, dear boy, you, I see, are conceited, arrogant, and regarding yourself as very learned." I mean, he'd been studying for many years, and so he felt rather proud and elated at the knowledge that he had managed to acquire. But the father, noticing that pride, said to him, "Shvetaketu, dear boy, you, I see, are conceited, arrogant, regarding yourself as very learned, very learned. Did you ask for that teaching through which what is unheard becomes heard, what is unthought becomes thought of, what is unknown becomes known?" And the boy asked, "Oh, what nature, revered sir, is that teaching? What is that teaching?" And then his father continued, and this is one of the clearest explanations that one can give of the core principle of spiritual life: the existence of God, the existence of the Spirit, the existence of the Atman or Brahman, whatever name you give it, the existence of a transcendental reality. So the father asked the boy, "Dear boy, just as through a single clod of clay, all that is made of clay would become known, for all modification is but name based on words, and clay alone is real." So if you have various items, that is what makes the difference between knowledge and ignorance. Everyone can see what is in front of one's face, what is being observed. Everyone can see that physically, assuming physically they are the senses are in working order. You ask people to look at things, they can see what is obvious. It need not be explained. But the reality behind that which is seen, the essence of that reality, what is that? What is at the core of this? What is obvious is clear to everyone, but is there something else, or is the surface of things the only reality? This is the basic question. And the father was pointing out to the son that what he had learned was a very accurate, very well-perfected description of the surface of things. But that which is at the heart, that which is the essence, that which is the core of things, did he ask that question? Did he receive instruction in that? And the son said, no, his teachers had not taught him that. And the father then said, yes, but what you have learned then is only the surface of things. Then the son became eager to learn what is at the heart, what is what is not on the surface, what is not obvious. And basically we're all in that position. I mean, it is easy for us to lead our life in using just the surface information, the obvious information that we have. But then, is that the whole of reality? And we know that that's not the whole of reality. For one thing, everything that's on the surface eventually will disappear. That which has come into existence will also disappear from existence. There is no exception that we have seen in this world of that. Is there anything else? Is there anything here which does not change? Is there anything here which is the substratum of everything that is observed? So this is the search within. In other words, the search for to search the external reality is what we learn in schools, is basically also what we are taught as children by our parents. They teach us how to negotiate, how to navigate in this world, how to respond properly, how to become effective in our roles in society. All these things we are very well instructed in. But what is at the heart of things, that is generally not taught, is generally not emphasized. And Nachiketa said that to his father. If his teachers had known that, why shouldn't they have taught that to him? So probably they did not themselves, were not themselves aware of that. So the teacher then uses these examples that if you have these objects made of clay, what is the reality about these objects? The name, the form, the function of what you see is obvious. But what is the core reality of what you're seeing? It's the fact that all these objects that are in front of us are made of clay. Then the Upanishad again explains it by using a different example. Or if you have in front of you different objects made of metal, say of steel, there'll be a knife and there'll be scissors and there'll be this and that made of steel. What is the reality of these objects? So it's easy to describe the name, the form, the function. But all the different objects that you describe that obviously are clearly made of steel, they differ in their name, form, and function, but what is the essence? How are they related in essence? In essence, they're all steel. So, in that sense, the implication then is the same for us here in this world. Everything that we see in front of us and everything that we can think about really refers to the name, the form, and the function. But the essence is never talked about. the essence is never referred to, the essence is taken for granted. So the real education starts after you learn all about the name and the form and the function. All our education basically deals with name, form, and function. Spirituality, religion, really begins when we inquire into the essence. What is the truth of these things, aside from the name, form, and function? So then the teacher the father tells his son the basic reality that he's trying to point out to the boy. There is the essence. What is the truth? Aside from name, form, and function, what is the truth about the object? The essence of the object, what is that? Sadeva somya idam agra asit. In the beginning, agre, in the beginning, what was there? In other words, if you take away all name, form, and function, is there anything left? Normally, we'd say there's nothing left, because we have, once you take away those things, there really is nothing to be further to be perceived. But the father tells his son, Sadeva somya idam agra asid. Agre, in the beginning, Sat existed. In other words, when you remove all of these superficial descriptions, all of the obvious things, all of the things that you can describe, is there anything left? And the father says, definitely there is. The essence is left. And the essence is existence. Well, that by itself doesn't seem like a complete explanation. Existence, it just seems like, in a sense, like quibbling about words. Yes, I know it exists, it is there. But what else is, if you take away the name, form, and function, how do you know anything else is left? How do you know that there is anything that, any essence beyond that? And that is the quest of our life, to find an essence to all of our experience. Because if our experience were confined just to the surface of things, it would be quite easy to declare ourselves, like this boy declared himself, to be very learned and very astute. But we have omitted from our purview the fact that there is the name, form, and function only refer to the superficial, the knowable, the physically and intellectually perceivable. It does not refer to the fact that beyond the body, that sees and perceives in so many different ways, beyond the mind that thinks and understands and absorbs and conjectures, beyond that, there is a reality which is not affected either by the body or the mind, and that is the purview of religion. So the essence of spirituality, the essence of religion, the essence of education is not just to accurately and very fundamentally describe what is observed, what is sensed. That science does in a most brilliant way, especially in the last 200 years or so. There have been tremendous advances in precise descriptions of our experience on all levels. except the spiritual. To the extent that people even disbelieve that there is anything else. But it is the role of religion, it is the role of spirituality to bring us back to that concept, that beyond all of these things that are easily accessible to our senses or to our intellects, there is a reality which is at the basis of all of this. And the perception of that reality is the purpose of religion. So the father, as he continues his instruction to his son, he says, Sadeva somya idam agra asi. There is something in the beginning, before names and forms were manifested, or if you put it this way, if you take away all names and forms and functions, is there anything left? And he illustrates that. There's one example. He tells his son to take, there's a seed of a tree nearby. He picks up a seed and he asks his son to break open that seed. The son breaks it open. And there are little kernels within the seed, so he asks him to break those. And finally, the son finds, what is inside? Nothing. He doesn't see anything particular on the inside. He has taken this seed pod apart, and he doesn't find anything in particular. Takes apart whatever is there, keeps on taking it apart, and there's nothing in particular there. There's always the same type of reality is being shown. Nothing new comes up. It seems like there isn't anything else. So to the question of that the father asks, what do you see in this seed? Break it open. So he breaks it open. He says, no, I don't see anything in particular there. Then the father points out that from that thing which you do not see, which you cannot identify, out of that, this whole huge tree has grown. This Ashwatha tree or Nyagrodha tree, the exact name doesn't matter, but some of these trees grow to be, they say, they put down roots from the branches, aerial roots, and they can be, the tree itself can cover huge amounts of ground. They say it can cover acres. So out of that one seed, which when you break it up, you find nothing inside, this whole tree has grown. So it couldn't be that there was nothing. It couldn't be that there wasn't anything significant there. Because from that, this has sprung. So that in essence was in the seed. So that huge tree with all of its ramifications was present in the seeds, in subtle or in as a possibility. The seed had all the possibilities necessary to create that tree, taking from its environments, nourishments, water and sunlight. But it created, water and sunlight normally don't create trees, so it's the essence in the seed which created the tree. Now, out of that essence, which you cannot identify, which you don't see, this whole tree has grown. So there is something in every living reality, in every living being, which is the source of the being, which is different from the physical reality, which is different from the mental reality. There is a spiritual essence that is manifesting through matter. Matter itself becomes a conduit for something else. And what is that something else? then they use other examples like rivers. All the rivers flow into the ocean. As long as they are rivers, there is an entity there, there's an identity. This is the Ganga, this is the Yamuna, this is the Nile, this is the Mississippi. These are the rivers. They have a definite identity, almost you could say they have a personality. But once they flow into the ocean, the water in the ocean cannot be identified as coming from this river or that river. It is all merged in one reality. So in that same sense, that one reality out of which everything, out of which all diversity comes, there is that is the truth, and that is the real, that is the foundation of everything. Then he adds that most significant expression, that is also your own reality, tattvamasi. That from which everything springs, that by which everything is sustained, that into which everything dissolves, that is the reality from which everything that you perceive, everything that you know, also comes, from which your own being, your own reality also comes. So then that is the tattvamasi. Again and again he gives examples of, to illustrate that this is a principle that is it's not only a theoretical reality, it's actually present in all phenomena at all levels, all physical phenomena, all psychological phenomena have that reality at their core, manifesting in so many different ways. Now some people say that in the beginning, Sadeva Somya Idam Agra Asi, that Sat indeed, existence indeed, was at the beginning. Some people say, no, it is, how could you say existence? It was non-existence that was there at the beginning. At the beginning there was nothing. And from that everything came. But then from nothing, how can something come from nothing? This is the question that is asked. How indeed, the teacher asks. Yes, some people do say that in the beginning there was nothing. You see, the Upanishad is trying to discuss all aspects of philosophy. And there is a school of philosophy that says there was nothing in the beginning. And out of that nothing, everything was created. And they ascribe the agency to God. But if God was the agent for the transformation of nothing into what we perceive, then God was there in the beginning. And that is what generally spirituality assumes. That's what religions generally assume. The face of God moved over the waters. In other words, God was there before the waters. Then the waters were created, day was separated from night, and so forth. There's an initial causative agency. And there is a school of thought that would tend to say, no, in the beginning there was nothing. And then these things appeared. But there is the father asks the son, some people do say that, but how could it possibly be that something came from nothing? That is, they make that statement as being a contradiction in terms, and this is the basic statement that is accepted by all religions generally. In the beginning, there could not have been nothing. There was something in the beginning. In other words, the Spirit of God moved over the surface of the waters like that. God was there. And this here, it says, Sadeva Somya Idam Agra Asi, that Sat, indeed Sat was there, existence was there in the beginning. And from Sat, multiplicity was created. And the Upanishad has its own way of describing that reality thought, let me be many. And it became many. So that creative faculty, the creation of diversity, the multiplicity itself was inherent in the very beginning of things. So if you subtract, the idea is going backwards, if you subtract everything that you can possibly subtract, if you remove everything that can be removed, is there anything that is left? And the statement that all religions make is, yes, there is something that cannot be destroyed, there is something that cannot be changed. There is something that cannot be done away with. And that different religions put that in different terms, but that is at the heart of religion. And you might say, well, that's an assumption. It is not an assumption. It's as much a reality as the atoms, molecules, electrons, neutrons, quarks, whatever you want, were initially an assumption, and gradually they have been discovered. That you cannot eliminate everything as long as there is someone who asks the question. In other words, you can eliminate all other things, but you cannot eliminate the basic questioner. The fact that there is a question, was there anything in the beginning? No, there was nothing in the beginning. If there was nothing in the beginning, there would still be nothing. There wouldn't be any way to create anything from nothing. That is it, in the old Latin expression, ex nihilo nihil fit, from nothing, nothing can possibly come. So this is the basic belief. If you want to say that religion requires a certain basic faith, and it is absolutely necessary that there be a faith. Faith is the most fundamental aspect of spiritual life. Not necessarily faith specifically in this or faith in that, but that the faith of one's own reality, that at the core of oneself there is a reality which has never come into existence, which cannot be destroyed, and which is the observer or the witness of everything. That is the basic faith. Certainly religion is based on faith. But every statement that is made, or every idea that is implied, is based on faith. If one wants to bring that faith down to the very most fundamental aspect, what is the core faith that we must have? It is this, the faith, the idea I am, Sat, existence. I am as a human being is a secondary thing. I am as a thinker is a secondary thing. But the idea of I am, that is the fundamental upon which every doubt is based. Even those who doubt the existence of a fundamental principle, anyone who questions it, is basing his very question, his very doubt on the idea he is assuming the idea of existence. Without existence being at the very basis of the foundation of everything, no question can possibly arise. No question can be asked. There can be no questioner. So this is the trend of the argument here in this Upanishad. And that's why so many, the boy is again and again asking his father, please explain it further, please explain it further. And the answer always is that which is at the core of everything, whatever example he gives, is that reality, that existence which is unquestioned. And Sat is that, Sadeva Somya Idam Agra Asid, that statement which is the heart of this Upanishad, is that there is, at the very beginning of things, at the very core of things, at the very heart of things, there must be something which is fundamental, which is unchanging, which has nothing and has no qualities, but is the essence of all things and of all qualities. And when we reach that, we're reaching perfection, because we have eliminated all the things that one could ask questions about, and we've come down to the reality about where the questioner itself is absorbed in that which he questions. So at the essence, all of this must merge into one reality. The questioner, the question, and what is being questioned about are one existence. And that existence is also intelligence, Sat-Chit. And it is also Ananda, it is also bliss, in the sense that there is, that in that state of oneness, that is the final state of bliss. All the other things that we consider blissful or happy are steps that lead to that reality. And ultimately, that the basis of our existence is this, the basic of our consciousness, the basic of everything that we experience, is that unchanging unity, that unchanging oneness, beyond all names and containing all names. So, but there are other examples that because this boy asked so many different questions, everything, he, in order to understand fully, in order to investigate all possible objections, he again and again asks his father to explain further. So in so many ways, the father continued, that being which is this subtle essence, even that all this world has for itself, that is the true, that is the Atman, that thou art, O Shvetaketu. Okay, but then Shvetaketu, the son, says, revered sir, please explain it further. So he does. He says, for instance, these eastern rivers, dear boy, flow along to the east, and the western ones to the west. They rise from the ocean and merge in the ocean and become that ocean itself. And there, as these rivers do not know themselves as I am this river, I am that river, even so, dear boy, all these creatures, having come from being, do not know we have come from being. And whatever these creatures were here, either as a tiger or a lion or a wolf or a boar, or a worm or a fly or a gadfly or a mosquito, even that they become again. That being which is the subtle essence, even that all this world has for itself, That is the true, that is the Atman that thou art, Shvetaketu. And then the boy again asked, revered sir, please explain it further. And the father, never tired, continues explaining it. Of this large tree, dear boy, if anyone were to strike at the root, it would exude sap, though still living. If anyone were to strike the middle, it would exude sap, though still living. If anyone were to strike at the top, it would exude sap, though still living. As that tree is pervaded by the living self, it stands firm, drinking constantly and rejoicing. If life leaves one branch of this tree, then that branch dries up. If it leaves the second one, then that branch dries up. If it leaves the third, then that branch dries up. If it leaves the whole tree dries up. Dear boy, know that even so, being left by the living self, this body surely dies, but the living self does not die. That being which is this subtle essence, even that all this world has for itself, that is the true, that is the Atman, that thou art, O Shvetaketu. This is the message again and again in so many different ways. He asked him to bring a glass of water and some salt, and then he puts the salt in the water, dissolves the salt in the water, and or puts the salt in the water and leaves the glass there overnight. Overnight the salt all disappears, dissolves in the water, and the boy brings the glass back the next day, and the father said, "Where is the salt?" And the boy says, "I don't know, Father, it was here before." So then the father asked, taste a little of the water from the top of the glass. What is it? Oh, it is salty. Taste the water from the middle of the glass. What is it? It is salty. Taste the water from the bottom. It is salty. The point is that which you saw as being separate before, which you do not see anymore, has now pervaded the whole. In the same sense, that essence which you don't see, that is what pervades everything, that is your own self, that thou art, O Shvetaketu. It is a remarkably insightful and profound series of examples. Again and again, some 14 or so different times, the Father explains in so many different ways, using so many different examples, so that it becomes quite clear, it becomes quite obvious that there is something that is, that has to be transmitted, that has to be understood. It is not something that one can see and examine under the microscope. You see, oh yes, you look at a piece of furniture and you see, oh, it's solid. Then you put it under a microscope and you find it does have structure. You can see, even though it looks smooth, it does have structure, variation. You put that under an electron microscope, you find that everything inside is not solid at all. It's made up of molecules. And then by using particle accelerators, you break up those molecules or break up those atoms, you find they're made up of protons, neutrons, electrons. The emphasis always is get stronger accelerators, get more accelerators that have more energy. You examine these particles further and you find now, initially it was found, yes, there is these particles, protons, neutrons, electrons. These seem to be fundamental particles. These are really the essence of things. This is what everything is made of. So they got more energy and they bombarded it further, and they find those absolutely seemingly indestructible particles break apart. And they're consisting of other things. And now they find these particles which they thought were fundamental are not fundamental at all. They're made up of something they call quarks. The quark is like a quirk. I don't know how they came to that name. It's a very strange name for a particle, but physicists have that tendency of being somewhat humorous also. But then they found the quarks, it's not just one quark, there are a whole series of quarks. And there's still, the question remains, what are these quarks made of? There must be something more fundamental, or there could be something more fundamental. And they imagine they may be made up of vibrating strings. There's a theory of that sort which has apparently had some success. And what are these vibrating strings? By that time you're getting to a level of, to a depth within the atom that is so small that it's beyond the limit of observation. So nobody has been able to deal with the fundamental realities. But the point is, we still haven't gotten to the fundamentals of everything. So if you go in a physical way, you can get to a lot of uniformity, and you can see a lot of, to a great extent what is fundamental. But whatever is fundamental on a physical level can always be broken up, at least in concept, and phrased in a different way, or looked at as a wave function rather than as a particle. All these different possibilities are there, and there's no indication that we can ever come to the end of things. But Swami Vivekananda made the strong argument that, spiritually speaking, we can come to the end of the confusion that is the result of our investigating the physical nature of things. We can come to it when we come to that reality of which is at the core of everything. In a spiritual sense, we don't run into the problem of physically trying to get to the core, to the reality of things. Physically, we have not been able to do that, and there's no indication that there's any limit to this. Eventually, these things may be resolvable, even on a physical level, to a limited extent, but religion points out to the fact that even if you come to a realization on a physical level, that question still remains. What is the essence of that which is the essence of everything that you observe? But on the spiritual level, we come to the end when the question itself vanishes. The question vanishes because everything becomes, it's not a question asked in consciousness, everything becomes consciousness itself. Everything is seen as consciousness itself. Sat Chit Ananda, as existence. Sadeva Somya Idam Agra Asid, the Upanishad says, existence alone was there in the beginning. That existence is also seen to be Chit, that is consciousness. It is not only an existence, unitary, you can't even say it's one, but it's not two, Advaita, not two. But also that consciousness comes, in other words, the consciousness, we're conscious of many things. That consciousness itself becomes a unitary consciousness. And there is no second in that consciousness also. And that joy, we have now joy in so many things, joy in this and joy in that, and some things are more joyful than others. But that joy itself is a unitary thing. So that one reality is described as Sat-Chit Ananda, that it is beyond expression, but if you are able to express it in any way, you can either express it as Sat, existence, which the Upanishad describes, Chit, or Ananda, which in the Taittiriya Upanishad is shown to be the last reality. So the ultimate state that is reached, if you examine the spiritual aspect of things to the ultimate degree, you come to this point that ultimately it is describable as a unity, as it is indescribable. It is a unity, but even if I say it is a unity, I am describing it as a unity too. So there are several of us here. But it becomes beyond description, it becomes avang manasa gocharam, beyond the range of mind and speech. And then that is that you can't say that's the way of describing the fundamental reality, the essence of everything, the background of everything, because the description itself stops. But the idea is that physically, using physical sciences, and intellectually using psychology and all psychological applications, we have not been able to reach finality. We have not been able to reach that total satisfaction. Mankind is always aiming for total satisfaction, for ultimate satisfaction. And on the physical level, it has not been possible to reach that. Although in the past 100 years, tremendous progress has been made in an attempt to do that. But each time it has been a further explanation, a further pointing to a further development that could be done, pointing to the fact that this need not be the end of all investigation. So on a spiritual level, only is it possible to achieve this. And how do we know that? From the knowers of Brahman, from the knowers of that divine reality, who have made this statement that in the beginning it was existence alone. Sadeva somya idam agra asid. And a chit consciousness. It was existence, it was consciousness, and it was ananda, it was bliss. In the Taittiriya Upanishad, when they examined the different sheaths of the human personality, when they reach to that sheath, Anandamaya Kosha, it still is a kosha, it is still a obscuration of the inner reality, but it has become so pure that you can see the next step, even though if you go there, you vanish. This is the example, the most wonderful example is that of the salt doll, which Sri Ramakrishna uses to describe these very things. Imagine a doll made of salt that wants to measure the depth of the ocean. Now, why she wants to measure the depth of the ocean, you should not ask those questions. The point is, there's a salt, you imagine a salt doll measuring the depth of the ocean. As long as she is out of the ocean, she can talk about, yes, I want to measure the depth of the ocean. I want to understand how deep the ocean is. Yes, yes. As soon as she steps in the ocean, she becomes the ocean. And there is no one left to ask the question. So the question itself disappears. when she again comes out, when she again separates out as a separate reality, as a salt doll, again she separates out from the ocean. Say some part of the water dries up and the salt again is left. Then you ask that salt doll to describe the ocean, she can only describe it as something at a distance. She cannot describe what it really is. Brahmavid Brahmaiva Bhavati. The knower of Brahman becomes Brahman. And when that knower of Brahman has become Brahman, all the questions no questions can further be asked. So this is the same thing. Sri Ramakrishna's example of the salt doll. When the salt doll measures the depth of the ocean, she wants to measure the depth of the ocean, but as soon as she gets into the ocean, there's no salt doll and no measurement can be made. There is only that reality. So, in other words, the way to come to the end of the question, to answer the question, what is the ultimate reality? The answer comes by the disappearance of the question. When the question can no longer arise, total satisfaction has been achieved. As long as the question is answered, a further question can arise. The only way a further question can no longer arise is when the questioner itself merges into the reality that is being questioned about. Om Yahu Shanti Antariksham Shanti Prithivi Shanti Apo Shantir Osharaya Shanti Vanaspataya Shanti Vishve Deva Shanti Brahma Shanti Sarvam Shanti Shantireva Shanti Sama Shantiredhi Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, peace is in heaven, peace is in the sky, on the earth, and in the waters. The herbs, the plants, and the trees are full of peace. The gods are peaceful. Everything in the universe is pervaded by peace. May that infinite universal peace enter our soul and being. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us all.